There's a simple way to make your feedback useful. You need to learn the difference between observations and evaluations. And once you understand this, your feedback will support learning instead of feeling awkward. And this is really easy to do. I'm Jonathan Kahn, communication coach, and we're going to fix your feedback. We're going to fix our feedback. Here's what we're going to cover. First, what is effective feedback? How do we normally give it? How to fix it by separating observations from evaluations? How to give constructive criticism, or how to give positive feedback, and then some pitfalls and an advanced technique of how to give critical feedback. So what is effective feedback? First of all, it's clear. You know what you're being told and why. And secondly, you can act on it. You know what you can do to make your work better in the future. And finally, it supports learning. It helps you to find out what's working and develop your skills. Why do we need feedback? It's because we can't tell what's working all by ourselves. We need to understand how what we're doing is coming across to other people. And we can easily get lost in the detail. You're working away at your thing, and you need someone else to look at it and tell you how it's coming across. And it's also essential for learning new skills. A lot of studies have shown that people can't learn unless they get useful, effective feedback. How do we normally deliver feedback? Well, normally we mix up two things, observations and evaluations. Observations are things that we see and that we notice around us, and evaluations are the way that we interpret those signals, the judgments we have, the thoughts we have. Now, normally we mix these things together. So I might say, John, that report you did,
sure.
The problem is it's unprofessional. Unprofessional. It's not really what you were expecting. Now, what's wrong with that? The first thing is he's going to take it personally. Even if you separate your feedback so it's about the work, not the person, we still take it as if it's about us. So he'll think I'm saying he's bad at what he's doing. Secondly, he doesn't know why I think that. He doesn't know what in the report I think is unprofessional. And that means he can't fix it. So what we need to do here is separate out our observations from our evaluations. This isn't to say that you shouldn't evaluate things. You're going to whatever happens, and they're not necessarily bad. You just have to understand that they're separate from observations. A lot of the time, sharing our evaluations is not helpful. And instead, we need to figure out where those evaluations came from and look instead at the observations that led to them. So here's the fix. How to separate observations from evaluations. First of all, evaluations aren't bad. That's just how our brain works. We evaluate, we judge, we have thoughts. You can't stop making evaluations. All you can do is start to notice them and decide whether you want to share them when it's time to give some feedback. Ask yourself, is this something that I observed, noticed, saw, or heard? Or is this my interpretation or judgment of those things? So going back to that example with John, why did I say the report was unprofessional? Let's think about that. Well, yeah, I think actually the problem was that he wrote it in a Comic Sans font in a very large typeface. It was full of spelling errors, and I couldn't see a very clear argument within this report, okay? So let's just try that again. John.
Hi, Jonathan.
Thanks for sending that report through. I've got some feedback about that.
Great.
Now, actually, I was quite sort of surprised to see that you'd used Comic Sans as the font. And I think it was about 30 points, so it's about 24 pages of A4. Which wasn't really what I was expecting. And also, there are several spelling errors. Did you think about using the spell check?
That would have been a good idea, Jonathan.
Right.
Yes.
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
And then finally, I couldn't really see the argument. The idea of one of these reports is it's supposed to show someone why we think they should do a certain thing. And I didn't really understand the argument in yours.
Well, I can definitely have a look at that, Jonathan. I'm sure we can sort that out. Yes, thank you for the feedback.
Yeah. So could you look at that and maybe do another draft? Great. Here are some more tips about how to give observations, how to fix your feedback. Observations are going to be about your perceptions, not about your subjective judgment. So think about what you've actually heard, seen, noticed, and then try to make your observations in a narrow context, time limited, so that you can say, in the last week, I've seen you do this, or in that meeting, I noticed you said that. So instead of saying she's a hard worker, which is your evaluation, say in the last 4 weeks, she's shipped the tasks we allocated ahead of time. And it's even better if you can share a way of measuring those things, like for example, within the project management system that we have, I can see that she's finished these tickets really quickly. And that way you can show specifically what you've noticed that leads you to your evaluation that she's doing a good job. So how can we give constructive criticism? Imagine I want to tell John that he needs to speak up more in meetings. So the way to do this is start from the evaluation in your head. So for me, that evaluation might be, he's great at his job, but he's quiet and that's holding him back. The way to deliver this to John is to break this down into the underlying evaluations. So we have 3 here. We have great at his job, quiet, and then the way I've said but, as if there's a contrast between someone who's quiet and someone who's good at their job. So we've got to figure out what the underlying observations might be. Maybe I think he's learning the new skills quickly. He's taking on responsibility. That means he needs to work with the team. But in the last 5 meetings, he's only spoken when someone asked him to, and even then he didn't say very much. Okay, so there's a bunch of observations there. So let's try delivering that to John right now. John, yeah, how's it going?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Nice to see you.
I mean, I just want to give some feedback because I think you're doing a really good job, and there's some areas where I think you could improve.
Okay.
So what it is I think you're learning a lot of new stuff, and I can see that with all the new skills you've produced, and you've started to do a lot of stuff with more responsibility, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
And that means you need to work more with others in the team, obviously. And what I've noticed is in the last 5 meetings, the only time I actually heard you speak was when someone asked you to. They said, oh, John, what's going on?
Oh, I see.
And even then, John, we didn't hear very much from you.
I see.
And the problem with that is it doesn't allow us to kind of get the most from all these new skills that you're learning. So what I'd like you to do is figure out a way to speak a bit more in those team meetings so we can all work together. Could you give that a go?
Okay, I'll see what I can do. I think that's a good idea, Jonathan. Thank you.
Let me jump in here to tell you about communication coaching. If you'd like to work on your communication skills one-to-one, then coaching is for you. I work with people all around the world from my little office here in the UK, whichever time zone you're in, and it happens by video call. So I'll assess your communication in the real world, find out where you're blocked, and then we'll work out which skills you need to work on, what things you need to practice, and then in the sessions we'll run through those exercises, and then I'll send you back into the workplace to try them out in real life and then report back on how it's going. You can book a 30-minute consultation with me right now at togetherlondon.com. Now, let's get back to the video. So let's talk about giving positive feedback. Now, this sounds like it's much easier than negative feedback. Everyone likes to be told they're doing a good job. But the problem is, if you give vague positive feedback, it can actually be a bit off-putting because the person's sort of not really sure why you're pleased with them and what they need to do to reproduce that. For example, John, that was a great talk. Oh. Nice one.
Thanks.
The problem with this is that John doesn't know why I said that. He doesn't know whether he can reproduce that. And what if I don't like it next time? What's he going to do then, right? So let's break it down into why. Why did I say good job? I could say, oh, John, mate, I could really follow your argument there.
Oh.
I really understood where you were going. Oh. You kept my attention. I liked how it was 5 minutes long, really nice and concise. And I felt that it really answered the main question I had about the topic.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for sharing that feedback.
So yeah, nice one. Here are the top 3 pitfalls to avoid when you're giving feedback. Number 1 is the sandwich. This is where you surround your negative feedback with 2 slices of positive feedback. Do not do this because people know that you're doing it, and so they completely ignore the positive things and then they focus and wait for the negative part in the middle. So although this might seem nicer to you, it's not nice to the person on the receiving end of it. Instead, find a way to be straightforward with your feedback and offer it as observations. Number 2, bland feedback. This is where you say, yeah, that was a great talk. There's nothing wrong with bland feedback, but there's nothing that people can do with it. So try and tell people why. And then the final pitfall to avoid is telling people what they are instead of what they did. So this is to say you're lazy instead of you've shown up late for 3 of my meetings. We're going to finish off with an advanced technique, which is how to give critical feedback. Now, sometimes in this situation, separating your observations from your evaluations is a good start, but it might not be enough. So imagine I'm talking to John. John,
hi.
At the last 3 meetings, you've arrived 5 to 10 minutes late for each meeting. I've noticed that.
Oh, maybe a couple of minutes.
Now, this is better than telling him that he's lazy, but it's going to get a defensive reaction. He doesn't know specifically why I'm bothered about this, and he's not sure what I want him to do. So in this case, we need to reach for an advanced technique where we share 4 things: an observation, what we noticed, a feeling, a need, and a request. Let's break this down for you. For John, we'll tell him what we noticed, how that makes us feel, which is frustrated, what we want, which is him to respect everyone's time, and then a request, which is for him to figure out what the problem is and fix it. So, let's bring him up. John, I've noticed that at the last 3 team meetings, you've arrived between 5 and 10 minutes late.
Is it that though?
Now, I'm frustrated about this because I want to respect everyone's time on the team.
Right.
Okay? So, would you be willing to talk to me about why this is happening
Absolutely.
and what we might be able to do to resolve it?
I'm sure we can work something out.
All right, so in this video, I've shown you how to separate observations from evaluations, how this makes your feedback more useful and effective, plus some top tips and some pitfalls. So let me know in the comments when you need to give feedback and what's the most tricky part of that for you. And if you've got any other techniques to share about great ways to share feedback, let me know how you get on. So I'm Jonathan Kahn, a communication coach, and I'll see you next time.
Comic Sans? Oh, well, I mean, that's one of my favourite fonts. I thought it was rather cool, actually.